Tina's phone buzzed. It was a credit alert, 500,000 nairas, just like the guy promised. She stared at the screen in shock, then laughed out loud in her small, shared apartment in Surulere. Her friend, Sandra, who had helped her connect with the client, looked impressed. "Girl, you have really hit it big," Sandra said, grabbing Tina's shoulders. "Just one night, and your rent is settled. Or won't you buy a new iPhone?" Tina smiled. She had played this game before. Hookups, sugar daddies, club boys. She always stayed sharp, never stayed the night, and never got emotionally involved. But this one was different. The amount was too good. And the client? A mystery. No name, no Instagram page. Just a WhatsApp DP of a golden lion statue and one simple instruction. Come to Ikorodu by 8 p.m. Wear red. Alone. Something in her chest felt strange, a small discomfort. But she shook it off. She was Tina, the street queen. She could handle anything. By 7 p.m., she was already in a bolt heading toward Ikorodu. She wore a tight red dress, heels that could kill, and a pepper spray hidden in her bag. Her eyes watched every street, every movement, like a hawk. She didn't trust easily, but she knew how to play the Lagos game. As the car turned off the main road and entered a dark, bushy path, her phone lost network. She looked out the window. No streetlights, no houses. Just bush, and more bush. "Driver, you sure this is the place?" she asked. The driver nodded but said nothing else. Tina's heart started beating faster. But she stayed calm. After all, it was just one night. The car stopped in front of a large, silent mansion. It stood alone, surrounded by tall trees and thick darkness. There were no security guards, no dogs barking, not even a sound from crickets. Tina stepped out slowly, her heels crunching against the gravel driveway. The mansion looked modern but felt ancient, like it carried secrets. A soft red glow shone from a few of the upstairs windows. The driver didn't say a word. He simply reversed and drove away, leaving Tina alone at the gate. She hesitated, then pressed the doorbell. After a few seconds, the gate opened on its own. "That's strange," she whispered. "Is this a smart house or a haunted one?" She stepped into the compound cautiously. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No music. No sign of house staff. No sign of life at all. Then the front door creaked open by itself. A tall man stood in the doorway, wearing only a white wrapper and red beads around his neck. His eyes were calm but intense. "Welcome, offering," he said softly. Tina laughed nervously. "I think you meant visitor. I'm here for the arrangement." The man didn't smile. He stepped aside and motioned for her to enter. "Come in." Though her instincts warned her, she reminded herself the money was already in her account. She entered the house slowly. The floor was shiny white marble. The walls were decorated with strange carvings and red cloth. Candles flickered in every corner. There were no other guests, no music, no drinks, no sign of any party. Just this quiet man in beads, and the echo of her own footsteps. Something felt wrong. Tina sat on a black leather couch in the sitting room while the man disappeared into another part of the house. She glanced around. The mansion was beautiful but empty. Then she noticed two women in black walking past. They carried trays of food but didn't speak. Their faces were blank, like they were in a trance. Tina stood and walked toward them. "Excuse me, where's the restroom, please?" The women didn't answer. They continued walking without blinking. She returned to her seat, feeling more uneasy by the minute. The silence in the house wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, like the building itself was watching her. She decided to look around. The hallway had several doors. One was locked. Another had strange white markings drawn across it, symbols she didn't recognize. She touched one of the symbols. It felt cold, almost wet. When she turned, the man in red beads was standing behind her. "You are very curious. Offering," he said, his voice deep. "My name is Tina," she replied sharply. "I came for a business deal. Let's be clear." He smiled slightly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "All in good time? First, come and eat." He led her to a long table filled with food, soups, rice, meat, and fruits. But something smelled strange. The food looked normal, but there was a bitter scent in the air, like burnt herbs. Tina sat down and picked at her food. She noticed he wasn't eating. After dinner, he led her upstairs, opened a room, and gestured for her to enter. "You may rest now. The ritual begins at dawn. Tina froze in the doorway. Excuse me, what ritual? But the door shut behind her before she could say another word. Tina rushed to the door and tried to open it, but it was locked. She kicked and banged on it with her fists. "Let me out!" she shouted. No response. She turned around to inspect the room. The walls were painted deep red, but as she looked closer, she realized it wasn't paint. There were streaks of dried blood, handprints, and strange symbols all around. Animal skulls hung on ropes above the window, and black candles burned with tall, twisted flames. Her breath caught in her throat. She opened her bag and grabbed her phone. No signal, no bars, no Wi-Fi. Her heart pounded harder. She spotted a small crack in the wall and moved toward it. Peering through it, she gasped. On the other side was what looked like a shrine. There were idols, skulls, feathers, and a large bowl filled with thick red liquid. The floor was decorated with bones and chalk symbols. Tina stumbled back from the wall in horror. This wasn't a hookup. This was something far more dangerous. Tina sat on the floor, hugging her knees tightly. Her thoughts raced. Could this be a prank? A spiritual trap? A ritual? She began to feel dizzy. Her head spun, and her vision blurred. The candle flames flickered strangely. Then, everything changed. She wasn't in the room anymore. In her mind, she was lying on a stone table, surrounded by hooded figures. The man in red beads stood above her with a curved knife. They were chanting in a language she couldn't understand. The bowl of red liquid was beside her, and someone was pouring it on her chest. She screamed, both in the vision and in reality. Then everything went black. She woke up lying on the bed, drenched in sweat. The candles were still burning, but now the symbols on the wall were glowing faintly. Had she just had a nightmare? Or was it a warning of what was to come? Around 3 a.m., as the drums faded, Tina heard a whisper at the door. "Girl, come closer." She froze. "Who's there?" "I'm one of the housemaids. I can help you." Tina rushed to the door. "Please, I want to leave. I don't want to die here." The woman passed a tiny key through the gap beneath the door. "This will open your door, but you must leave before 4 a.m. After that, they will take you to the shrine." "Why are you helping me?" Tina asked. The woman whispered, "Because I was once like you, but I escaped before they could finish the ritual." Before Tina could say more, the woman disappeared. Tina stared at the clock. It was already 3:22 a.m. She had less than 40 minutes to escape. Tina slowly turned the key and opened the door. The hallway was dimly lit with red candles. She tiptoed out, heart pounding. The walls seemed to watch her as she crept down the corridor. She passed a room with a slightly open door and peeked inside. What she saw broke her heart. Women, at least 20, were locked inside cages. Some were crying. Others were too weak to speak. A few looked dead. She covered her mouth in shock. She wanted to help them, but she didn't have time. The drums began again. Faster this time. She ran down the stairs, across the silent dining room, and toward the front door. She grabbed the handle. Locked. Then, she heard slow footsteps behind her. Tina turned quickly. The man in red beads stood there, smiling as if he had been expecting her. "You cannot leave, offering," he said softly. She screamed and pulled out her pepper spray, spraying it directly at his face. He didn't flinch. He laughed. "Pepper spray cannot harm a priest of the spirits," he said calmly. She turned and ran into the kitchen. She grabbed the sharpest knife she could find and held it in front of her, ready to fight. He followed her, chanting words in a strange language. As he spoke, her body started to feel heavy. She tried to swing the knife, but her arm wouldn't move. She dropped the knife and fell to her knees. Her eyes filled with tears. She had been caught. Tina felt her body freeze as she collapsed to the floor. The man in red beads smiled down at her. She could barely move. Her limbs felt as if they were made of stone. Panic surged in her chest as the dark room seemed to close in around her. "You're too late, offering," he whispered, his voice like a cold wind. "You belong to the spirits now." Tina fought to breathe, but her chest felt tight. The air in the room was heavy, thick with ancient energy. She tried to scream, but no sound came out. The man raised his arms, and the chanting from the other room grew louder, as if the walls themselves were joining in. The shadows seemed to twist and curl around him. But in the haze of terror, Tina remembered the small key the woman had passed to her. It was still in her pocket. Her hands trembled as she reached for it. With great effort, Tina pulled the key out of her pocket and stared at it. Her fingers were numb, but she managed to unlock the door leading into the dark hallway. The man in red beads didn't seem to notice. His focus was entirely on the ritual, his arms raised high as if summoning something. Tina stumbled to her feet. Her body was still heavy, but the key had unlocked something inside her, something that gave her the strength to move. She ran, moving as quietly as she could, passing the open rooms filled with cages of trapped women. They all looked at her as she passed, their eyes hollow, as if they had already given up hope. She had to escape. She had to get out, before the ritual consumed her. Just as Tina reached the front door, she heard footsteps behind her. "Where do you think you're going?" the man's voice echoed. Tina's heart pounded. She turned quickly and saw him emerging from the shadows, his eyes glowing like embers in the dark. The ritual was still going on in the background, but he had come for her. She didn't think. She ran. The man laughed, his voice dripping with malice. "You cannot escape. You are already part of this world." Tina dashed down the hallway, past the stairs and out into the night air. The moon was bright, but the path was dark and narrow. She could hear his footsteps following her, fast and determined. The forest loomed ahead. If she could just reach it, maybe she would find help. The forest was thick, with trees reaching out like hands. Tina's breath came in gasps as she pushed through the undergrowth. The air was thick with humidity, and the sounds of the night, chirping insects and the rustling of leaves, only seemed to amplify her fear. She stumbled on a root, nearly falling, but she pushed on, hearing the man's footsteps growing closer. Suddenly, she spotted something through the trees, a small hut flickering with light. "Help!" she cried out, running toward the hut. As she neared it, she saw an old woman standing outside, her eyes wise and knowing. "Come inside, child," the woman said, without even looking at her. Tina didn't question it. She rushed toward the hut, hoping the old woman could protect her. Inside the hut, Tina collapsed onto the floor, trying to catch her breath. The old woman closed the door quietly behind her. "What's going on here?" Tina gasped. "Who are they?" The woman sat down across from her, her hands folding into her lap. "They are practitioners of the old ways. This is no ordinary ritual. It is meant to summon and bind a soul to their gods." Tina's eyes widened. "So, I'm the offering?" The old woman nodded. "They need a soul that is fresh, strong, and full of life. They believe this will grant them immortality." Tina's stomach churned. She looked around, trying to make sense of everything. "But why me? I don't even know them." "Because you were chosen," the old woman said softly. "Your path was meant to cross theirs." Tina's heart raced. She had to find a way out, but she had no idea where to go. The old woman stood and went to a shelf, pulling down a small wooden box. She opened it and pulled out a bundle of herbs and a knife with strange markings on the blade. "If you want to survive, you must act quickly," the old woman said. "The ritual is nearly complete. The man in red beads will come for you. But if you use this," she handed Tina the knife, "you can break the curse they've placed on you." Tina took the knife, her fingers shaking. "How do I use it?" "The blade must cut the symbol," the woman said, pointing to the markings on Tina's wrist. "It will sever the bond between you and them." Tina nodded, though doubt still lingered in her mind. She had no choice. She would try anything to survive. As Tina held the knife in her hand, she heard the familiar sound of footsteps. The man in red beads was coming closer. She took a deep breath and stood up. The old woman moved to the back of the hut, leaving Tina alone to face whatever came next. The door opened slowly, and the man entered, his eyes full of rage. "You cannot run forever, offering. The ritual must be completed." Tina raised the knife, holding it firmly in her hand. "I'm not your offering anymore," she said, her voice strong. "I will not be a part of this." With a swift motion, she slashed the knife across the symbol on her wrist. A flash of light burst from it, and the man's body shuddered. "No!" he screamed as he began to fade. The ritual had been broken. The man in red beads vanished into the air, leaving behind only a faint trace of smoke. The house around Tina shook, as if the very foundation of the ritual was collapsing. Tina collapsed to her knees, breathing heavily. The weight that had been pressing on her chest was finally gone. The old woman appeared beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You are free, child. You have broken the curse." Tina looked up, tears filling her eyes. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to be a part of their game." The old woman smiled gently. "You were never meant to be a part of their game. You were meant to escape." The next morning, Tina left the hut with the old woman. The forest seemed less dark, less oppressive. The air felt fresh and clean. "Thank you," Tina said, turning to the old woman. "I don't know how to repay you." The woman smiled. "You have already repaid me by surviving. But remember this: not all battles are fought with strength. Sometimes, survival is the greatest victory." Tina nodded, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in days. As she made her way back toward the road, she knew she would never forget the terror of the night. But she also knew she had the strength to face whatever came next. Tina's story is a chilling reminder that not all that glitters is gold. Sometimes, the things we chase, money, comfort, quick success, can lead us straight into danger. But Tina didn't just survive a deadly ritual. She reclaimed her life, her power, and her voice. In a world filled with shadows, she became her own light. Let her story inspire you to listen to your instincts, value your life, and never trade your worth for temporary gain. If you enjoyed this thrilling tale, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Magical African Tales for more captivating stories rooted in our rich African culture and mystery. New stories every week. Stay magical.